And I think you'll find a lot of this pretty funny. You guys stop the yeah. You just have to stop the music on that
Goodness
side.
gracious. We'll start this over.
PR again? Pastor performance rating. It's like QBR, but for pastors. Basically, take the number of their congregation divided by the number of satellite campuses. Take the number of times you see them on TV per week, multiply it by the New York Times bestsellers. Divide that number by the number of minutes their sermon goes over each week. Very simple. That's the PPR. I'm going to need a team name from everybody. Andrew, what do you got?
I will be the non-denomination domination.
Non-denomination domination.
I will be show me the tithe money.
Show me the tithe money. Okay, I like that. I'm going to be first and 10%. Thank you. Trick, what do you got?
I will be take a knee.
Dude, take a knee. Come on.
For the prayer, not the anthem.
It's good.
Blessings to all of you. On your picks, we do the first shall be last system here because we're Christian. Andrew, since you lost last year, you got the first pick. Who do you got?
I mean, gotta go with Osteen.
Osteen. Solid pick. Goes #1 every year. I like that move. This guy's got books in airports. Preaches to a huge congregation every week. Great looking man. Beautiful wife. Well done.
He's the Tom Brady of pastors.
Can't argue with that. Who's got the second pick?
I'm taking Furtick.
Stephen Furtick. Good move right there. You know, highest applause break per sermon of every white pastor in the league.
Yeah, he always comes into the season in great shape too. Like the season's about to start, but he's already yoked, bro. Just CrossFit twice a day.
Okay, I'm next. With the third pick, I'm taking Jesse Duplantis. Thank you.
At 3?
Big mistake.
Yeah, at 3 because he's about to raise $54 million for his private jet. Those preaching numbers, those sermons per week are about to skyrocket.
Are you not going to mention my come from behind W last year?
Okay, no one could have predicted that Justin Bieber and Judah Smith walked into Coachella. We can't, you're not taking credit for that, okay? Who do you got?
I'll do John Gray.
John Gray, solid pick right there.
That's TD Jakes.
Okay, yep, okay. You got the first pick in the second round. Who you got?
I'll take Beth Moore.
Beth Moore, that is a solid pick right there. I like that. You got a minority in the first round. You followed it up with a female in the second round. I like 2018. I respect that.
And that Twitter account right now? Fire, dude.
You're going to get like the whole Methodist lineup right there. That's going to be a solid pick. Okay, I'm next with the first pick in the second round. I'm taking the best pastor in Atlanta, Georgia. Louis Giglio.
Louis Giglio. Yep, knew it.
That is just hurtful.
I'm sorry, has Andy Stanley ever sold out the Georgia Dome? I don't think so.
It's true. Yeah, numbers don't lie, dude.
Okay, with your second round pick, Trick, who do you got?
I'm taking Joseph Prince.
Ooh, sleeper pick.
And best hair in the draft, hands
How
down.
does he do it week after week? I envy it.
Thank you.
Andrew, who you got?
Well, I don't know how he's still on the board, but I'll take Andy Stanley.
Andy Stanley.
Oh, didn't see that one coming.
Solid pick. Huge church. Always converts in the red zone.
Red Zone?
Christmas and Easter. You ever been to one of their services in the holidays? They play mistake-free ball.
I've tried, but I went to all 9 campuses and I couldn't find a single parking space.
Okay, last round is a rapid-fire flex pick. You're going to take your favorite quality from 3 of your favorite undrafted pastors, combine it into one super pastor. Andrew, who do you got?
Yeah, so I'll take Joyce Meyer's TV numbers, Judah Smith's fashion decisions, and Francis Chan's racial ambiguity.
Ooh, that's going to be hard to compete with. Aaron.
I'm going to go with a purpose-driven pick and go with Rick Warren's book sales, Brian Houston's accent, and Tim Tebow's body.
Okay, do you see Tim Tebow up here? Tim Tebow is not a pastor.
He is to me. I was on the comments last year, and it wrecked me.
Okay, you know what? I'm going to take T.D. Jake's stage presence. I'm going to go with Tim Keller's theology. And you know what? I'm going to go with the cell phone contacts of Carl Lentz.
Selena. Okay, I'm taking Creflo Dollar's tithe numbers. I'm taking Levi Lusko's stage props. Wait for it. Pope Francis Twitter followers.
Ooh, Pope Francis Twitter? It's Catholic. Do they count?
No, that doesn't count. I can do that.
Okay, that's a wrap on the draft. I'll email all your picks on Monday. One thing, when your pastor is on bye week, always start your youth pastor, but expect way less production.
So again, I would encourage you, if you you can go and watch that and Google some of those names. And these are the celebrity pastors. And one thing that is funny about that, especially if you know any of the background, it's pretty accurate, a lot of that stuff. But it's interesting to me, and I started laughing because we have made pastors celebrities, right? And we kind of like to have someone that we prop up, right? That says, okay, that's someone who's representative of us. You know, that we're looking for, you know, kind of a powerful figure at times. And now there's obviously some major downfalls and some pitfalls with that. But one thing that's happened in our culture today, with the way social media has gone and basically trying to do church and be able to grow church, in some ways we've had to start looking like the culture. And so that means, what do we do to attract people and get them to come, right? And so then that creates celebrity pastors. It creates celebrity systems. You know, what's the group, you know, the method or the mode that they're using to get people to come in. And so it's natural that that happens because we're kind of inclined to do that. And I want to kind of play off of that, and I want to say and look at way back in the Old Testament. We've talked a little bit about this one before, but we're going to be in 1 Samuel chapter 8. And this is the first time where the people of God, who God was wanting to use the people to be his messenger, this was the first time that they basically said, you know what, we're tired of that, we want a celebrity. Right? We want someone who's going to represent us. And we're going to kind of explore that a little bit. So let's look at 1 Samuel chapter 8. This is, of course, early in the history of the people of Israel. They've come out of Egypt. They are now in the promised land. They've been ruled by judges and things like that. Things have been going fairly well. Now there's conflicts around and stuff like that, but things have been going okay. Samuel has been kind of the leader, but you know, at this time they have the system that God had laid out for them. So the Levite tribe that's the priestly tribe. They are kind of in leadership positions, and you know, but they don't have a king. They don't really have a government like everyone else at all. And people are starting to get nervous about that. And so they come to Samuel and they confront him. So starting in 1 Samuel chapter 8. It says, when Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons as judges for Israel. The name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second was Abijah. And they served at Beersheba. But his sons did not walk in his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain and accepted bribes and perverted justice. So the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah. They said to him, you are old, and that's a good way to start, you're old, and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now appoint a king to lead us, such as all other nations have. But when they said, give us a king to lead us, this displeased Samuel, so he prayed to the Lord. And the Lord told him, listen to all that the people are saying to you. It is not you that they have rejected, but they have rejected me as their king, as they have done from the day I brought them out of Egypt until this day, forsaking me and serving other gods. So they are doing to you. Now listen to me, but warn them solemnly and let them know what the king who will reign over them will do. I'm going to skip down to verse 19. So between verses 10 through 18, he basically said, here's what a king does. And it's exactly what a government does. They start saying, you have to do this, you have to do this, and forcing you to do things that you may not want to do. And then in verse 19, it says, but the people refused to listen to Samuel. No, they said, we want a king over us. Then we will be nations, with a king to lead us and to go out before us and to fight our battles. When Samuel heard all that the people had said, he repeated it before the Lord. The Lord answered, listen to them and give them a king. Then Samuel said to the men of Israel, everyone go back to his hometown. All right. Kind of a good way to end, too. They started off saying, you're old. It ends by Samuel saying, y'all just go home. Right? And you can tell Samuel is really frustrated with this. But I want to look at this situation because whenever we read it, we look at it and say, oh, why would those people make that decision? Why would they do that? Why would they rebel that way? Couldn't they see what was going to happen by getting a king? And of course the answer, yeah, they knew what was going to happen, but they wanted it anyway. And it's easy for us to kind of be self-righteous and looking back on that now. But at the time, there were some things going on, and I think we need to look at kind of what's going on behind the scenes that caused them to make this decision. And the first was they had a lack of trust in God. Right? And that's really sad, because these are people who had seen God do some pretty amazing things. Right? And they weren't that far removed from crossing the Red Sea, from God using judges and doing some miraculous things to help them overthrow their enemies. Right? They've seen all this, but yet, ultimately, they didn't really have a trust in God. And if we're honest with ourselves, we struggle with that too. They didn't have a problem believing in God. Right? This is not about that. They believe in God. And they believe that God is part of their life and a big part. They're not wanting to kick him out completely. Right? They're just not trusting that his way of doing things is the best way. Right? And they actually have some reason for it. Right? They see Samuel, he's done a pretty good job, but now he's leaving it to his sons. And they're worried, hey, these guys aren't very good, and so things are going to go to hell. And they don't trust that God and God's way is big enough to overcome Samuel's sons, is basically what it comes down to. And so they're like, we need to kind of take control of this situation. And I started thinking about that, and so all of a sudden they go, you know what? We believe that God exists, we believe that he's there, but we don't trust that he has our best interest at heart. We don't trust that he's going to provide what a king would provide. And a king provides safety, right, in theory. Right? This is why you have a king and why you have a strong king, is that a king provides safety and security. Right? It provides prosperity. It expands your kingdom. Right? So that's what they were hoping in a king. And they didn't trust that God's way would bring those things. Right? They didn't trust that God's way would bring them security. They didn't trust that it would bring them prosperity. Because I think what happens to even us is we start to look at the world and we start to look at our circumstances, and we base how things are going, and we base whether God is trustworthy on the circumstances around us. So if things aren't going really well, we start to say, man, God's way really doesn't look too good. Right? If things are going great, we're like, yeah, maybe God knows what he's doing. But there's a big danger in basing whether we trust God or not by our circumstances. Because the minute that we start doing that, the minute that we start basing on whether we're going to trust God or not on what's going on around us, guess what? You're going to get a phone call. Or life is going to happen. And then you're going to say, man, I don't trust him anymore. That is a very unhealthy relationship with God. And ultimately the people, especially these leaders, had an unhealthy relationship with God. And they did not trust him enough to provide what they needed. And so then they said, we need a king. We need someone to do that for us. Right? And this is an interesting part of this. As you read through there, they specifically say, we want a king so that we can be like the rest of the people. Now, looking at this from a positive way, maybe they're seeing, hey, that's working out pretty well for those other nations. Right? And I'm sure they were. They were like looking at different nations and saying, ooh, their economy's doing really well. Man, they're powerful. People respect them. They can go and wipe out a country. They have no problem building an army. All these things, right? And they're like, hey, we could be that. And they wanted their country to be successful and powerful and wealthy. And guess what? It actually became that with the kings for a while. Right? And so they're seeing that and they're like, hey, that would be great. But what at the heart, what they were really saying is they were saying, you know what? We don't really want to be responsible to be God's message in the world. Because here's the plan that God had, and that he had clearly laid out for them, is he said, you are to be my people. You need to trust me. Right? We're going to do things differently. The system that God laid out for the people was different than it had ever been seen before. It was a different way of being a people, of being a nation. And God was saying, you need to trust me enough to do that in order that you become a light to all other nations. The only way that you can make a difference in the world is that you have to be different than the world. And the people at the heart of what they're asking is they're saying, we don't want that job. We don't want to do it. God, figure another way out to tell the world that you care about it. We don't want to do it. And that's why God, you can tell that God is pretty upset here in this dialogue with Samuel. God's saying, Samuel, they're not rejecting you. This isn't about your sons. Yeah, maybe you weren't a great father. Or maybe your sons were just jerks and chose to rebel. Right? Maybe that's it. But that's not what it's about. They are actually rejecting me. Right? God is... You know that God is up there saying, look at all that I have done for you. Look at how I have revealed myself to you in very powerful and substantial ways. And in turn, I've just asked you to live your life differently, to give people a new direction, to give people hope. And the problem is that Israel was so focused on what they wanted that they didn't realize that what other people had wasn't very good. Right? It wasn't bringing happiness. It wasn't bringing fulfillment. It wasn't bringing hope. And God is asking Israel to be different and to actually live in a way that brings hope and purpose. But they said, you know what? No, I'd just rather go back and live like everyone else. I think we've done the same thing today. And just the idea of the celebrity pastor kind of reflects that. Because you know what it does? Is it allows us to say, oh, I really, that Joel Osteen guy, I really like him. And all of a sudden we start talking about him. And we don't have to talk about what we're doing. Right? We talk about him and we say, hey, we'll let them take care of this. Right? We don't want to actually be the ones to have to live out the message of Christ. We'll let the celebrity pastors do it. Right? That is, and they're not, that's not what they want, by the way. I'm not criticizing the celebrity pastors in most cases. Right? But that's what we're pushing off our responsibility on someone else. We're saying, hey, we want the king to do all that stuff for us. And we do the same thing. I go to conferences with a bunch of people that we've planted churches, and guess what we'll talk about? We'll talk about pastors that have more people come to their church than us. Right? We all do this, and I think we need to really step back, because at the heart of it is the fact that we need to start asking ourselves, do we really trust God? Do we really trust that what He has laid out for us is the best way to live? He's laid out a way for us to live our life that is in a relationship with Him, that requires us to be repentant, that requires us to learn, that requires us to live differently. Do we trust Him enough to do that? And then are we willing to take on the responsibility that He's called us to take on? See, He hasn't called just a few celebrity pastors to be His mouthpiece. He's called all of us to do that. He's called each one of us to be his messengers in the world. And if we're honest with ourselves, and I think we need to be honest, is we should be a little bit uncomfortable with that. Right? We need to understand that is a high calling. That God has said, no, I want you to be the ones to go out and to be my messengers. I'm not calling just a few of the large churches, or I'm not calling denominations, I'm not calling the celebrities, I'm calling you in your circles and in the people that you come in contact with, that you are my messenger to them. And man, that can make us uncomfortable. And sometimes it'll be a whole lot easier just to say, oh, you know what? This guy's doing a really good job, and I listen to all his podcasts. Right? Man, God wants more for us. And in order for us to make a difference in his kingdom, we all have to embrace that. And that's really hard to do, but I want to encourage you to trust God enough to actually be his messenger. Because, man, he has trusted you. And sometimes, I don't know why he's trusted us. But he has. And so what are we going to do? Are we going to shirk that responsibility like the people of Israel were trying to do? Or are we going to embrace it? And are we going to move forward? And are we going to allow God to use us to make a difference in the world? Trust him enough to do that, because he certainly trusts you. All right, let's go to him in prayer.